This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
This is Global Business Africa. Hello and welcome to the show. I am Peninah Karibe. We begin with a look at the markets, which took a knock from all sides this week with no end in sight to the spread of the Delta variant of COVID-19 and talk of stimulus tapering in the U.S. The U.S. top futures linked to the S&P 500 were down 0.45%. Dow Jones futures dropped 0.45% and Nasdaq futures fell 0.27% at last check at 10 GMT. The declines came after a choppy regular session for the major U.S. benchmarks, which closed mixed Thursday. Here in Africa, a splash of red as well across most of the bourses that we track. Coming up on the show tonight. Copper producers are ready to pump up investments in Zambia's mining sector. NATO urges the future Afghan government to make sure the country is never a haven for terrorists. And smart hydroponics gain popularity among farmers in Tanzania. We begin in Zambian. Copper producers say they are ready to start expansion projects worth billions, or $2 billion, I should say, next year. And that's, of course, if the industry can reach an agreement on royalties with President-elect Hakainde Hichilema's new administration. First Quantum Minerals Limited and EMR Capital are ready to raise funding for the projects, while other producers need to spend hundreds of millions of dollars in capital that they'd held back since 2019 because of tax changes that deterred investment. Hichilema faces a tough task of turning around Zambia's economy. Aside from the coronavirus pandemic ravaging the economy, the nation also has to hold off creditors while the new administration restructures debt. Economists are ringing alarm bells over inflation in South Africa, even as data released shows a drop in annual consumer price inflation. Lending rates have remained historically low at 3.5% and 7% since last year, but upward pressure on food and oil prices may see that change soon. Sumitra Naidu tells us more.
Annual consumer price inflation eased for a second month in a row, coming in at 4.6% in July from 4.9% in June. While this is good news, there are concerns of price pressures creeping in.
Inflation for oils and fats also continues to escalate, reaching an annual rate of 22.4%, the highest in almost 10 years. The food and non-alcoholic beverages category was the largest contributor to annual inflation, with price rises remaining steady at 6.7%, unchanged from June and May. Meat and oils and fats continue to exert upward pressure, with meat prices rising by 9.4% over the past 12 months. This rate has steadily climbed since August 2020 and is currently at its highest level since March 2018.
Agri-economists are also warning that higher global food prices are causing price escalations on the domestic front. Oils and fats again recorded the largest increase in July at 22%. Fuels rose 15%.
I think next month is going to be another issue, because we are going to get a much bigger petrol price increase, and that's going to mean we're going to see a jump in inflation. The base impact of inflation in July last year was quite large. It was the month-on-month was very big.
The rising cost of utilities are also leaving consumers out of pocket. Electricity recorded a 13.6% jump last month. Municipalities in South Africa raised tariffs in June and July to coincide with the new financial year. But Stats South Africa says the increases are much higher than 2020, despite a drop in water tariff increases.
You cannot have 15% increases in electricity prices and 10% in water, because that's what everybody actually, pays. And if we look at that situation, the administrative prices are increasing roughly at 9%, or double the rate, and that's keeping inflation high.
Economists expect CPI to rise to 4.8% next month. The Reserve Bank has held back from hiking rates as a support measure to the economy and consumers, but has warned that it will have to start acting later this year in order to keep inflation under control. Sumitra Naidu, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
Still in South Africa, the country has published new electricity regulations that will allow private and industrial users to generate their own power. The long-awaited regulations will liberalize the energy market. It also means that the state electricity utility, Eskom, will no longer dominate the entire market. Here's Sumitra Naidu once more with the details.
Large industries are expected to line up for self-generation. The new regulations allows businesses and private users to generate up to 100 megawatts of power.
I think it's going to make a huge difference. I mean, it's a factor of 100 times higher than what it was before. And it's hoped that this will really unlock a significant amount of investment by the private sector.
For years, state-owned electricity utility Eskom has been the only major power provider in the country. Other generators were only allowed to generate 1 megawatt of power under a licensing exemption threshold.
It's good. It allows companies to do a couple of things. Firstly, to get a bit of resilience in terms of the electricity supply to ensure that they have stability by generating their own. And secondly, it allows companies to be able to use more renewables.
Electricity prices in South Africa have risen over 300% in the last decade. Eskom is granted tariff increases every year. Most of this money goes towards building new power plants and maintaining old infrastructure. The utility has also been plagued by years of corruption, and taxpayers have had to bear the brunt of higher prices and erratic power supply. Big businesses that need a stable electricity supply have been investing in their own power generation, but were stifled by regulations that allowed only minimal use.
To date, we've got about 35 stores that we've installed solar systems on. And then also we've signed up a contract with an energy provider that will install utility scale plants to generate more than 100 megawatts of renewable electricity.
Shoprite has cut its electricity bill by at least 1%, representing over $1 million. The regulations will drive a lot more investment.
We are realizing some business benefits, some financial benefits, in the sense that we are able to source the renewable electricity at a tariff that is lower than what is supplied by the national grid. We will have an energy provider providing us with electricity wheeled to our different stores. And that will represent about 25% of our electricity that we use, and will start in the next 5 to 7 years.
It will take time though, but experts are pleased that the market has been opened.
There's a whole lot of processes by NERSA that are going to have to be really streamlined in order to cater for the volume of application. At the moment, the registration process and the licensing process is very cumbersome.
While this is good news for private users, Eskom is likely to suffer a drop in sales. But with a record number of load-shedding days in 2020, many are more concerned with keeping the lights on. Sumitra Naidu, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
In some corporate headlines, Royal Dutch Shell PLC's Nigeria's venture has lost the right to operate an oil site. That's after a court ruled the company wasn't entitled to renew a lease first granted in 1989. The court has instead granted the operating license for the oil mineral Lease 11 field to the state-owned Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation. South Africa's Mango Airlines has held its first meeting with employee representatives and creditors as part of its business rescue process. Employees of the low-cost airline are expected to be paid their outstanding salaries for last month. The voluntary business rescue process was approved on July 28th, and the goal is to have a proposed rescue plan by the end of October. Volkswagen and Toyota have warned of production cuts owing to the global computer chip shortage. Toyota adds that it could slash output by 40% in September, pushing its shares down by 4.4%. Shares in European car makers and suppliers were also broadly weaker, with BMW, Daimler, Renault, Volkswagen and Stellantis all down by more than 2%. And US tech giant Apple has delayed recalling staff to the office until January at the earliest, Amid fears over surging COVID-19 cases, the firm told staff it would reconfirm plans a month in advance and advise them to get vaccinated. Apple is the latest U.S. firm to revise its plans in the light of the impact of the Delta variant in the country. And that's a look at your corporate headlines. This is Global Business coming up. Unpaid bills for Kenya's national government hit $3.3 billion. And Zimbabwe's poultry industry targets are up to 40% growth this year.
The world economy as we know it is about to change. Global business reports highlight emerging markets, developing countries, and dynamic sectors worldwide. We feature top analysts and newsmakers to provide perspectives on every facet of business. From an on-the-ground perspective, we provide you with balanced and objective assessments. Fast, sharp, and insightful. Global Business, only on CGTN.
Every story starts out like this.
Okay. We'll head up now.
But beyond the rush of the numbers, there's always a more fundamental question. What happened? Who has been affected? When market-moving decisions are made, who's responsible? And why?
Let's get some reaction on ground. Joining us in Johannesburg is Peninah. Hello, Nairobi.
This is how all stories begin. See how they end. Only on Global Business.
There's more to this place than just glorious landscapes. There's more to it than just, say, Table Mountain or glorious, endless salt flats. There's more to it than countries that are home to some of the deepest mines in the world. There is so much more to this place, even if it is home to some of the finest diamonds on the planet. It is the sheer diversity of the people who call Southern Africa home, and the relentless drive to make it a better place that make it so special. And we know that because this too is home. No one knows Southern Africa like we do. CGTN, see the difference.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and Global Business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
The Kenyan government's arrears on payments to contractors and suppliers has increased 8% in the year through June. The pending bills, including unfulfilled statutory payments to agencies such as pension funds, amounted to $3.3 billion. The National Treasury says the outstanding claims continue to surge even after President Uhuru Kenyatta issued a directive more than a year ago to quickly settle them. Delayed payments, in some instances for years, have hit businesses in East Africa's largest economy and led some to collapse. Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed is back in the country after a visit to Turkey. Abiy Ahmed met with Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. The leaders discussed furthering both economic and military ties. The trip came as U.S. Special Envoy to the Horn of Africa visited the country. CGTN's Gurum Chala has more on the government's reaction to both visits.
Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed's recent visit to Ankara has been hailed by the Foreign Ministry here in Addis Ababa for the diplomatic success it has brought back home with it. The two nations have signed military and general economic agreements, including water-related deals.
There was a successful visit of the Prime Minister to Turkey, where he was given a tumultuous welcome by the President of the Turkish Republic. The two countries have exchanged views on strengthening bilateral relations between them. They reiterated the historic relationship that has been existing, and the interest and the determination on the part of the leadership of both countries to further enhance the relationship.
The spokesperson also talked about the recent visit of U.S. President Joe Biden's special envoy to Addis Ababa. Dina said Jeffrey Feltman has reflected a rather better than before opinion over the situation in Tigray.
The special delegation led by Mr. Feltman was here in Addis Ababa, briefed by our Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs. Mr. Feltman, in his own words, said the U.S. government will give due attention to sovereignty, freedom and territorial integrity of Ethiopia. He said Ethiopia should no doubt be the U.S. as competent in this regard. Furthermore, Feltman said the United States understands the key role Ethiopia plays in the region. This is unusual and different from Mr. Feltman's approach to this matter.
Ethiopia has also expressed its disappointment over what the government said is the continued silence of the United States.
The United States should have called a spade, though that was not the case.
At the moment, war in the north is ongoing, especially in several border towns between Tigray and Afar, as well as the Amhara regional states. There are so far different proposals for peaceful resolution of the conflict that have been brought forward, but they are yet to yield results. Group Data CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
Zimbabwe's poultry industry is targeting between 35 to 40% growth this year as it rebounds from a drought-induced slump in 2020. CGTN's Farai Mokutuya has the details from Harare.
Tafadzwa Charumbira claps his hands to rouse his chickens so they keep feeding and reach their commercial weight on time. Just one day longer than necessary means the birds start eating into his profits, which are already tight in a business that operates on close margins. Charumbira chairs an association of over 600 small-scale poultry farmers who are planning to increase their production on the back of last year's bumper harvest.
The major challenges that we have, which makes it a bit difficult, is the current economic environment where things are changing. Sometimes the prices of your input costs are skyrocketing, but the intervention of this association, where they have helped us with access to finance and where they are also helping us with a better or good agricultural practices, makes it much helpful. We have seen farmers growing and doubling their production capacities. For instance, my example, I was doing 2,000 beds before the initiation of this association. Now this batch has 4,100. We are targeting to be doing 10,000.
Small-scale farmers are expected to drive growth of chicken meat production projected at between 35 to 40%.
So our emphasis as an industry and the emphasis as my chairman is to grow the small sector. So we need the environment to be equal, the bumper harvest of maize, good prices of maize will give us a better product. Also availability of foreign currency, to import raw materials like hatching eggs, and also to import machineries to retool hatcheries.
If the conducive environment is created, the industry has capacity to produce 15,000 tons of chicken meat per month. Average monthly output for the first quarter of 2021 was 10,573 tons, 21% higher than the same period last year. However, there are lurking risks that need mitigating. Small-scale poultry farmers have been urged to meticulously adhere to biosafety and security protocols. These will prevent outbreaks of avian diseases that have previously stumped production and that could financially ruin them. 2 avian influenza outbreaks in 2017 led to some neighboring countries banning chicken imports from Zimbabwe and forced the culling of more than 240,000 birds at a single farm owned by the country's biggest poultry producer. Farai Mwakutuya, CGTN, Rua, Zimbabwe.
Despite the considerable support from foreign countries and governments who provided medical oxygen and oxygen production units for the Tunisian Health Department, the oxygen crisis persists. In fact, hospitals are still facing an oxygen shortage, and the civil society has mobilized to provide portable oxygen concentrators.
The municipality of Tunis has donated hundreds of oxygen concentrators to many public hospitals as well as basic healthcare centers in the popular neighborhoods of Tunisia in order to face the problem of oxygen shortage.
The municipality of Tunis is contributing to the national effort to fight the coronavirus. We are collecting donations from local associations and foreign partner municipalities, then providing oxygen concentrators to the hospitals where medical and paramedical staff are exhausted and patients are in urgent need for oxygen.
The governor of Tunis noted that the oxygen concentrators are life-saving machines. Therefore, local authorities and the health department have made portable oxygen concentrators available at home in order to provide oxygen supply to citizens facing respiratory issues.
We must be ready to face a new wave of the pandemic in autumn. It is necessary to provide oxygen concentrators at home because many hospitals could reach their maximum capacity in a few days if the number of infections rise in the capital city, Tunis.
Tunisia has the second highest number of coronavirus-related deaths in Africa after number 1, South Africa. This result was made public by the World Health Organization Regional Office for Africa based on data collected on August 15th.
The health situation is still critical, but the success of the vaccination drive will have an impact on the population in the next few weeks. 1 month ago, we managed the scarcity of vaccines, but now we're managing the availability of COVID-19 vaccines and the hesitancy of some people.
Tunisian authorities have allowed any Tunisian traveler to import an oxygen concentrator free of charge while returning to Tunis. Therefore, thousands of citizens are importing their own machines for personal or family use. According to the World Health Organization, Tunisia is leading the Maghreb region in the number of deaths. Experts at the Health Ministry and the COVID-19 task force are hopeful that the availability of oxygen concentrators will curb the rate of deaths. Aden Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
You're watching Global Business. We're taking a short break. Coming up, NATO urges the future Afghan government to make sure the country is never a haven for terrorists. And China runs a digital currency campaign in several cities in the country.
It's taken me completely out of my depth, but at the same time it's exciting. It's new, it's different, it's a challenge.
It's really exciting.
Over the last 14 hours of rain.
No one again he can hold in
Machine guns from police forces toward the protesters.
Were you worried about your life at that particular time? Not at all.
What is your assessment of the state of the continent today?
Africa has the potential to power itself.
Excuse me.
Business in Africa is at a crossroads. We celebrate those who are adopting and thriving despite the challenges, from grassroots to big businesses. Global Business takes you along for the ride as we track the making of a giant. Only on CGTN.
Accra is my kind of city. That's because when I'm here, I feel like I'm back home in Lagos or Abidjan, which are two of the major cities I grew up in.
Business in Africa is high risk.
After about a decade covering business news on the continent, I've learned it's all about the high risk, but also the high returns and the high energy. You simply have to adjust in order to keep pace. When I started out as a journalist, my dream was to open people's minds to the different perspectives. From the CEO in the boardroom to the trader out in the street, we all have different stories. From Accra to Addis Ababa, from Cairo to Cape Town, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Here at CGTN, we realize that Africa is on the move, and it's moving fast, but we're moving right along with it. I'm Ucheo Koronkwo, and I'm a business anchor and reporter at CGTN.
I try to not let it affect me, but there are days when it does. I'm a human being, and to see patients in a hospital bed and their family members are not there, there's no one there to hold their hand, that human touch, you know?
I just hope everyone can remember that the situation is not permanent and that everything will get better eventually.
Let's look at other stories making headlines today. And the World Health Organization Director General Dr. Tedros Adhanom says vaccine injustice is a shame on all humanity, and if we don't tackle it together. He made the comments after reports that the J&J vaccines filled and finished by Aspen Pharmacare in South Africa are leaving the continent and going to Europe, where virtually all adults have been offered vaccines at this point. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has expressed his concerns on the unfolding humanitarian situation in Ethiopia. The UN chief is calling on all parties involved in the conflict in northern Ethiopia to implement a ceasefire and allow dialogue in resolving the issues that have led to the current situation. And finally, let's head to Nigeria, where gunmen have threatened to kill 15 students who were kidnapped in the Zamfara state if their ransom demands are not met. They are demanding $850,000 for their release. They had earlier killed 2 security guards and a police officer during the August 15th raid on the College of Agriculture and Animal Science in Bakura. And that's a look at some other headlines of the day. Several countries under the North Atlantic Treaty Organization alliance are calling for evacuations from Kabul to continue beyond the current U.S. deadline of August 31st. This comes amid reports that many people are seeking safe passage following the Taliban's takeover of Afghanistan and are stuck outside the airport. Speaking during an emergency virtual meeting, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg revealed that many of the NATO nations had sent planes to evacuate vulnerable people, but there was more capacity on those aircrafts than there were people ready to board them. Have a listen.
Allies are ready to receive Afghans and also ready to send down planes and help to evacuate. The big challenge is to get people on those planes. The limiting factor is not the lack of planes. The limiting factor now is actually the ability to get people into the airport process and on the planes.
Yesterday evening, we reached out to 450 people asking to go to the Kabul airport. After 8 hours in very difficult circumstances, only about 16 of them have been able to go through the gates. A few more may have been able to do so this afternoon. And that makes it super difficult for us, and that is exactly what we said and what I said to NATO on behalf of Belgium.
China is testing the use of a digital currency in several pilot cities, and in Xiaoyang New Area, it's promoting healthy, low-carbon lifestyles. Ning Hong pays a visit to the city and learns more about how the digital renminbi is looking to change lives.
People in Xiaoyang New Area can now earn digital RMB by opting for a low-carbon lifestyle. For every 20,000 steps walked, users can earn 50 yuan or $8 worth of digital RMB. The total amount is capped at 200 yuan or around $30. People can apply for a wallet for digital currency online or at the bank. The process only takes a few minutes. The currency can be then used to pay for public transport and in stores that have joined the pilot scheme.
Well, it's just a simple QR code, and all we need to do is to scan this. So it basically has no difference with mobile payment that most people are familiar with now.
The pilot plan to promote the digital RMB includes guiding people to combine health and green travel with the experience of using digital RMB. Overall, the total level of trade for digital RMB trade in the Xiaoyang New Area has exceeded 5.3 billion yuan or $83 million.
The digital currency is also being promoted to pay for public transportation or charging electric cars.
Well, the use of digital currency is more convenient than you think, and it's well combined with green travel. Traditionally, if you want to pay for the charging fee, you need to pick up your phone. But now, with this device in this car and also device inside this charging pile, all you need to do is build a connection. You can see over here that this is the car currently charging, and it's paying this charging pile in real time.
The event has given the people of Xiaoyang a new understanding of digital RMB. It also helps to expand the usage of digital RMB in Xiaoyang to more applications and a wide range of scenarios.
A Chinese government white paper published in July says that for the first half of 2021, over 70 million digital RMB transactions were made in China. The total volume of these stood at over 30 billion yuan or $4.6 billion. Ning Hong, CGTN, Xiaoyang.
China telecom shares rose by 34% in its Shanghai debut on Friday, defying a bearish market after raising $8.3 billion in the world's biggest stock listing so far this year.
China Telecom is raising more than 54 billion yuan from its Chinese mainland market listing. That is going to be the mainland Asia's 5th largest IPO. That means soon China's big three telecom giants, China Mobile, China Telecom, and China Unicom, will all gather in the A-share market, potentially draining capital from smaller companies. China Mobile in May applied to be listed in Shanghai. China Unicom, already listed at home, is delisting from the US due to tough and China-unfriendly regulations, reducing its funding channels. It is also facing bigger pressure from China Mobile and China Telecom, which are going to have bigger market caps after being listed at home. But watch out, Big Three. Other giants are also coming back to lure investors. A group of US-listed Chinese companies, including Alibaba, NetEase, and JD.com, have all carried out secondary listings. Doing a secondary listing in Hong Kong also helps to hedge against some of the geopolitical risks that have spilled over into financial market regulations in the US. One analyst says it's a good time for Chinese companies to return home.
For those Chinese companies who currently list in the US, probably there will be increasing trend for them to come back to A shares or H shares to list in the next few years at least. Besides the rising external uncertainties, what we see is the A shares market has been much more opening compared to the past. So at this moment, I think if the companies even listing in the A shares, it will be much easier for the A shares investors to invest in these stocks. So besides the financial market, on the economic side, one of the key things in the dual circulation policy is to boost the domestic demand. So it will be also an advantage for those companies who decide to come back and list and choose to list in the home.
The most practical issue is whether these repatriating companies' businesses will be affected.
Overall, there will be more opportunities for those Chinese companies who decide to come back to A shares or H shares to list. It will be much easier for them to promote the branding and the business models in the regions because the Chinese investors are more familiar with them compared to the US investors. So the liquidities in these stocks are expected to improve in the coming few years. And also on the other hand, in these areas, the tech sectors, actually the growth room actually are much more substantial compared to the other region because this is also one of the key areas the policymakers trying to grow. But the challenging side will be the valuations for these companies probably would be much or slightly higher compared to the peers. But this is also one of the opportunity is that keep pushing them to come up with the revenues to matching with their valuations.
So in general, analysts believe that there's an increasing trend for foreign listed companies to come back to Hong Kong or the Chinese mainland market. And it could be good news for tech companies, including telecom firms, which need strong financial support from investors to innovate. Xia Cheng, CGTN.
Mexico is battling a third wave of COVID-19, and among its worst hotspots are the places most popular with international visitors. CGTN's Alasdair Baverstock explains how Cancun, in particular, is experiencing something of two realities.
Cancun, Mexico's most popular beach resort. Tourism numbers are nearly back to normal here, just 20% lower than they were this time in 2019, according to tourism officials. Yet while COVID-19 may seem a distant problem on the beach, it's closer than it may appear.
Touristy towns like Cancun have been hit hard by COVID-19 since Mexico welcomed travellers back. And while tourism officials here say most international visitors are vaccinated, most Mexicans are not, exposing workers to a virus this town is ill prepared to handle.
Away from the beaches, the town of Cancun is living through pandemic hell, with infection rates spiking to levels never seen before. The town's main hospital now has an entire wing dedicated to COVID-19, where Silvana and Miguel, mother and son, have 2 family members on life support machines.
First, the father of my children and now my son are on respirators. This illness is rapid. On Sunday, my youngest had 97% blood oxygen, but by the time I had to call the ambulance on Tuesday, it was 55. I don't know if he'll recover. We just have to wait.
Quintana Roo state, where Cancun is located, is currently at orange status on Mexico's 4-level stoplight-style alert status, 1 tier below red, the maximum, meaning lockdown. However, full lockdown isn't an option here, the economic costs seen as too high.
Since June of last year, tourism has been classified as an essential activity in the state of Quintana Roo. So even if this state returns to red, there will be no lockdown.
Lockdown would be catastrophic for a touristic destination like ours. This region represents 6% of Mexico's entire GDP, and tighter protocols would not only affect our state, but our ability to contribute to the country's economy.
And while the locals depend on tourists, resentment is building.
Cancun represents a lot of income, and the authorities have polished the figures throughout to say we're at green or yellow or orange status. But it's not true. It's always been at red. It's always been a very bad situation.
As Cancun goes through its most serious stage of the pandemic yet, many visitors are likely to remain unaware or oblivious of the reality. Alistair Baverstock, CGTN, Cancun, Mexico.
TikTok videos featuring Chinese food and cooking demonstrations have become a hit on social media sites. Posts using the hashtag Chinese food have had hundreds of thousands of likes. It's led to a boost in popularity for some restaurants and social media influencers. Sarah Walton reports from New York.
It's enough to make your mouth water. Videos demonstrating how to make Chinese delicacies have become all the rage on TikTok. Using the hashtag Chinese food has helped users gain thousands of likes. When a food influencer posted about her trip to Bauhaus in New York, 10,000 people gave it the thumbs up.
We got a couple different flavors. Here's me eating the vegan chicken. It was literally so good.
And soon TikTok users started turning up to the restaurant in real life.
Some just show the video, hey, I want this kind of taste. Some just say, hey, I saw you on TikTok, I just wanted to try. What would you recommend? You could see on Instagram or TikTok, there's a lot of content creators that make really good pictures with using these Bao's boxes and everything.
Alias says TikTok has revolutionized the way small food businesses can interact with their diners.
Back then, you use Yelp and the picture is dead. So you just see a dead picture, but nowadays there's some more videos, there's people actually introducing the bao itself, there's back and forth, a lot of people commenting. That's alive. I think it's very significant.
And TikTok has sparked a lot of creativity.
Some of the most popular videos posted under the Chinese food hashtag include people trying rare types of food or participating in food eating challenges.
Today, I want to take you to a secret place in Chinatown.
Yu Chen-yi is a TikTok food influencer who regularly gets thousands of likes for her videos exploring Asian cuisine in New York. She says the variety makes it perfect for social media.
Chinese food is so diverse. There are so many kinds of food that you can imagine. Like even from my hometown, I'm from Hangzhou, there's so many different dishes, pastries, breakfast you can taste. I think diversity excites people the most. And then, of course, the presentation. All the elements combined together make people so excited about Chinese food.
Staff at Bites of Xi'an let her film them preparing delicacies from their hometown. And Yu Chen says that's key to making a good TikTok video.
I want to showcase something different than the mainstream Chinese food, and I want to be as detailed as possible. And I always try to include a little bit of like cultural elements, like Xi'an noodles and the burgers are very important.
Yu Chen says, like many Chinese food influencers, she hopes her TikTok videos will inspire people to try something new and learn more about Chinese culture. Sarah Walton, CGTN, New York.
Let's look at the commodities. Oil prices were down for a 7th straight session today, near 3-month lows, and heading for a weekly loss of over 6% as new lockdowns in countries facing surging cases of the COVID-19 Delta variant dampened the outlook for fuel demand. Broader investor risk aversion also weighed on oil, with the US dollar jumping to a 9-month high on signs the Federal Reserve is considering reducing stimulus this year. Still ahead on Global Business. Smart hydroponics gain popularity among farmers in Tanzania. And a Nigerian artisan marks 40 years making leather luxury bags.
Africa is a continent of diversity.
with varied climates and enchanting geography. And a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Tunis, Cairo,
Juba,
Johannesburg, Ethiopia,
Tanzania. Africa Live. Find your voice.
Images may appear to be identical, but looks can be deceiving. The difference is not always obvious. It has to be discovered. There are always different sides to a story. We put the focus on the details. To see more, to understand better. CGTN. See the difference.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Tanata, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival, and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
You don't find the stories of North Africa by sitting on the sidelines. No one else will take you where we can in North Africa. And no one else will show you what it's all about. CGTN, see the difference.
Welcome back to Global Business. Obi Ononye is a 65-year-old Nigerian who has been a leather artisan for about 40 years. Senior citizens like Obonye who continue mastering their craft are now passing on their experience and grappling with unique socio-economic challenges. However, every August 21st, they are celebrated and highlighted through the International Senior Citizens Day. CGTN's Alexandria Majala tells us more.
65-year-old Obiara Ononye works hard to counter any stereotype society may have about people that are his age and above. He's been a leather artisan since the late 70s and has no intention of retiring, especially because he built his business with his own hands and relied on word of mouth to promote it.
I started crafting leather in 1978, and mainly to make what I used or what I needed. Sandals, backpacks, sling bags, wallets. And then as I made them and used them, other people saw them and wanted me to make for them. And from one person to the other, I got a lot of referrals along the way.
Ononye markets a range of bags, wallets, pouches, and other leather accessories under his brand name Obi Leather. He attributes his 4 decades of staying power to unique design, the variety of products he offers, his dedicated use of high-end leather, and an uncompromising attention to detail. Some of his creations sell for about $2,440 each, and in time, he got some well-deserved international recognition. His luxury leather bags can be found on shelves in high-end stores across Nigeria, South America, and Europe. As the world celebrates and discusses issues affecting its senior citizens on August 21st, Ononye is encouraging both the young and elderly in Africa's most populous country not to ignore the economic opportunities and personal fulfillment that artisanal professions can provide.
Craft is like something most people fall back on. Maybe they would either want to learn it because they lost their job and they feel they could just make do with leather work. And for me, it's giving me the opportunity to do really what I've always wanted to do, which is like teaching.
World Bank data indicates that senior citizens like Ononye only account for 2.7% of Nigeria's 200 million people. The current president, Muhammadu Buhari, is 78. The unique challenges of people over 65 are arguably considerable, especially during the economic recessions and the ongoing coronavirus pandemic. In June, the Nigerian government inaugurated a governing board for the National Senior Citizens Center, following Buhari's signing of the National Senior Citizens Act, which directs that the elderly should be catered for through community-based systems. But Nigeria's population continues to climb relatively quickly, and the country has struggled through the years to honor its pension commitments. Ononye's strategy for enjoying this stage of his life is to stay in the moment and keep mastering his craft. Alexandria Majala for CGTN.
Smart hydroponics could soon help urban dwellers in Tanzania grow their own crops in small spaces at a very low cost. At the moment, most of the country's food is grown by smallholder farmers who are highly vulnerable to climate change because of their over-dependence on rain-fed agriculture. CGTN's Isaac Lukando visited Tanzania's largest hydroponics farm and filed the following report.
This lettuce is growing on rows of plastic pipes that circulate water. Mwamvua Mlangwa, the largest hydroponics farmer in Tanzania, learnt about this soilless, eco-friendly farming method on a trip to Israel. She says the lack of knowledge on smart hydroponics for many in the country has made financing her 4-year-old vegetable farm difficult.
I tried to source funds from the existing banks. By the time they didn't know what I'm talking about, because there was nobody doing hydroponic in Tanzania, so I had to use my own funds.
Mwami grows her vegetables on half an acre of land using fertilizer that dissolves in water, which is then recycled. She says with the assistance of a mobile app, a small space can yield up to 500% more than ordinary farms, while reducing water usage by 90%.
There's some app which you can download to control the nutrients which are coming on the plants. So you can do that. When you see the nutrients are lower, once you're connected to the internet, that app can tell you that like, the nutrients are lower, then you can come and add the nutrients.
Although global adoption rates for hydroponics are on the rise, Mwami says the country's adoption rate is still very low. To remedy that, she has begun passing her knowledge on the subject to university students studying agriculture.
The United Nations projects that the global population will reach 10 billion people by 2050, with roughly 83 million people added to the world's population each year until then. With less farming land available, hydroponics might just be the way to meet the world's growing food needs.
Although food is sufficient, Tanzania's overdependence on rain-fed agriculture often leads to low, unreliable and inconsistent productivity in the agricultural sector. With the potential use of less farmland, the government is looking to use methods like hydroponics to boost productivity.
What are we getting? Productivity is not about how many hours we spend working, not just about farm implements. It's also about the area you use to farm and what we have harvested.
Mwami sells her produce to major hotels, supermarkets and restaurants in the country. She's hoping that this soilless method of farming will grow to become the norm for farmers and urban dwellers across Tanzania. Isaac Lukando, CGTN, Dar es Salaam.
To South Africa, where a new research project is underway which could change the way elephants are managed in the country. The study looks at non-lethal population control of elephant cows as well as the behavior of bulls. The aim is to develop welfare parameters on free-ranging elephants that can be used by various conservation bodies from public to private game reserves. CGTN's Travis Andrews has more with this report.
They are the giants of the Big Five. But elephants are increasingly competing for the same resources as the public, which at times leads to conflict. How to ensure their peaceful coexistence with humans now forms part of a study by the Humane Society International Africa and the Elephant Reintegration Trust. Their research teams are focusing on strategies grounded in science that can be used to better manage elephant populations.
With the reproductive control and the elephant management and the long-term behavioral effects of the immunocontraception so thoroughly investigated, we have now partnered with ERT to focus on the reproductive and behavioral management of bull elephants as our next program, because we believe that human-wildlife coexistence is critical in biodiversity conservation. And we support the use of non-lethal methodologies to control and mitigate against so-called problem elephant behavior, and to improve welfare parameters for elephants in the wild.
4 components form part of the study, with some dating back to 2019. This includes the reintegration of captive elephants back into the wild. At the core of the project, though, is the immunocontraception program, which has led to 1,200 females being contracepted. Understanding undesirable bull behavior is also critical in order to prevent the need for culling.
And all too often, bull elephants are targeted and labeled as problem bulls, often with lethal consequences. And so we believe that the ERT program is critical to our understanding of what the possible causes of any decreased welfare issues could be.
So far, 9 reserves form part of the study, but the project could expand as more reserves look to utilize its findings as a base for best practices in elephant management. The results of this research program will inform bull management right across protected areas, and together with the immunocontraception program will no doubt prove to be an important management tool of elephant populations, both locally and in other African countries. Andrews, CGTN, Cape Town.
And looking at the currencies this morning, the South African rand slumped almost 3% to 15.39 to the US dollar, a level last seen in early March this year. The rand came under pressure as the dollar rallied to its best level since last year. The US currency started to climb after the minutes from the July Federal Reserve meeting were released on Wednesday and indicated a willingness to start cutting asset purchases before the end of this year. By the end of the day, the rand had made marginal gains, trading at 15.27. And that's it for this edition of Global Business. Do send your feedback to the contacts on the screen and follow us on our digital media platforms. I'm Peninah Karibe. Thank you for your company.